Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steel Sanctuary Podcast. I'm your host, David Barrow from SteelSanctuary.com. And today we've got a friend of the pod, Nick Farbar, with us. Nick, how's it going?
Yeah, thanks for having me on as always. I enjoy coming on. It's a good time, right? Get to talk about this stuff in depth. But
Yeah.
certainly, OTAs have added some intrigue to it all.
Week two of OTA started today. Anything stand out from today's practices?
Yeah, today's practice is like the start of like the downturn. So everything last week was probably more important. The only thing noteworthy today was Troy Fautanu took first team reps at right tackle for the
Yeah.
first time. So that was noteworthy, but that's also because Broderick Jones wasn't out there. So like you tell me how meaningful it is. But he got first team reps, which I think is meaningful enough because he gets to face, Highsmith and Watt, which I think is beneficial for a guy, especially, when it's day four for that guy in a team period.
Talk about welcome to your NFL moment, having to face those two guys in practice. That'll get you going. Um, what is your take on the tackle position? How is this gonna play out? Are they gonna leave Fuatanu as the swing guy early in the season, like they did last year with Broderick Jones, or are we gonna see the rookie start? How do you see this going after?
My guess is that Fautanu will start. Um, Listen, if you draft tackles 2 straight years, you're looking to replace the other guy. It's pretty clear that they are looking to replace Dan Moore. Would not be surprised if they trade him just because he is a left tackle exclusive
Mm-hmm.
player. And really, you look at that guy. And while Dan Moore's a really, solid backup, you want a swing tackle to be your third tackle. And they have options, Spencer Anderson, Dylan Cook. So we'll see. I think Fautanu is, he's an older player. He's experienced. He doesn't really need the reps, to sit on the bench like Broderick Jones did. Broderick Jones was a young player coming in raw.
Got
Fautanu
all the
is
starts.
polished.
Yep.
So it's more about deciding where each player fits best. Do you like Fautanu best on the left or the right? I think that's really where you figure it out. I think profile, just like, I think if you look at it from a history of the right tackle and left tackle positions, Fautanu is more naturally a left, and Jones is more like a right. I'm not sure that's gonna be how it plays out. The modern NFL is a little different. Would not be surprised if Fautanu is the right tackle. I think the fact that they started him there says a little something, and Broderick Jones is playing both. So they'll figure this out. I think Fautanu will at some point slip over to left, and they'll kind of see what he looks like there. And then after training camp, preseason, they'll plug it in as how they see fit. My prediction is it will be Broderick Jones at left tackle and Troy Fautanu at right.
One of the questions I was going to ask you today, and it's interesting you brought it up, is do you think Dylan Cook will ever make them feel good enough as a swing tackle so they could trade Dan Moore and get something before the season starts?
It's kind of interesting because you look at him, at Dylan Cook specifically, and he has not played a ton of tackle. Played a lot of football, but he was a quarterback in high school and even, middle into his college career before switching over to tackle. I think he has a ton of upside. He had a really good camp last year. I think you look back at the preseason tape he put out, I thought it was pretty good. Um, and I saw him throughout the season, going on the scout team against guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, and I thought he competed. So I do think, he could be a guy that they really trust to play as a swing tackle. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think they have something there. I like Dylan Cook. Really nice pickup, athletic player. Uh, just grows every single month I see him on the field. He looks solid this year too. He's just a really, steady player with gifts you're not going to have. And I think being a quarterback helps him too, looking at stunts and
Yeah.
playing. He plays four spots along the offensive line, center being the only one he doesn't play. So he's a versatile guy that can go up and down the line. I think he can be comfortable, but I don't think they're going to say trade Dan Moore until, they see in training camp and in the preseason what they have and
Yeah.
Dylan Cook, Spencer Anderson, etc.
That's interesting stuff because obviously we don't get to see any of Dylan Cook whatsoever. So it's good to hear that the position flexibility, which we know the Steelers like, and that he might be something. That's very interesting. Let's go to the quarterbacks, man. Everybody wants to know about the quarterbacks. How have the quarterbacks looked so far? I know it's
So
tough. It's OTAs. It's
yeah, so OTA's team periods in the past, I think, are more entertaining when you have a coordinator in place that is from coming from the previous year. That's more about competitive football. Right now, the OTA team periods are more about can the guys just recall the play that Arthur Smith calls? So you're not getting a ton of, flash or pizzazz this year on the offensive side. Defensively, I think you're getting more of it just because they have been there and done that. Tara Lawson's been here for a while. Um, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have looked pretty par for the course. The arm talent is there. It's a noticeable jump from Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky. The arm talent is much different. Even if you consider Russ washed at this point in his career, the arm is not. The arm is there. He's got the deep ball is elite still. I think that's been one of the things I've really just seen sparkle. Like Russell Wilson's deep ball is so good. It's still elite.
that's good to know.
Justin Fields has, a very strong arm and fits it into some very tight windows. So that's really where it is now. None of the guys have made like egregiously dumb throws yet. I imagine that'll come in training camp when the intensity ramps up a little bit. But so far, it's been pretty par for the course. Both of them have been bang, bang on. And so I don't think there's any cause for concern, but I'll also say in the other direction, I don't think there's, something that I saw that was different from their film last year. I think that they're pretty much what you expected if you watched Bears or Broncos tape.
Hmm. George Pickens is going to like Russell Wilson, right? Throwing him those deep balls over the top. Some of the ones
Yeah,
that maybe Kenny Pickett didn't throw. That seems like it could be a good combination if all works out.
I think they're gonna, throw a lot of deep balls this year. I mean, look at the
Yeah.
speed they've acquired in the
Yep.
room. You know, even I again, I don't think any of us love Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, Calvin
No.
Austin, Ben Jefferson, but all of them are vertical threats that win down the field. And so you can throw the ball down the field to them. George Pickens certainly is going to love it too. Whether they throw, go balls down the sideline, posts, shot plays, whatever it might be, that guy's going to be a benefactor of the deep ball. And Russ's deep ball, the touch on it, um, the accuracy on it, it is astonishingly just consistent.
Hmm.
He has thrown so many deep balls already, and every single one of them is on the mark. It's pretty impressive actually to watch. Um, I think it's like his one truly still elite trait that he has is that deep ball. It is exactly what it was during his height in Seattle. The patented moon ball, it's there, buddy. It's still there. He can uncork those suckers. So I think George Pickens is going to be a big benefactor of that. I want to see Pickens become a three-level threat this year. I want to see him win downfield in the intermediate and in the quick game. So I want to see him become that, and I want to see him become that superstar that's a consistent separator. I thought last year he started to flash the ability
Hmm.
to separate and run routes. I want to see the finishing touches on that. And I think George Pickens has a real chance to, be a top 20, top 15 receiver this year. I think it's not far-fetched to think it. If he can take that next step as a route runner, I mean, I think he was top 30 last year, maybe top 25. Another, step in the route running department, I think gets him even higher there.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of that's tied to the quarterback play too, right? So hopefully, it's better than it was last year for sure. I mean, it's a pretty low bar, but that's what we're hoping for. Since you brought up the wide receivers, anybody named George Pickens stand out at all? Anybody separating themselves in this group so far, showing you anything? I know people have been impressed with Watkins' speed, right? I've read that a couple times, but
Yeah.
that's nothing new, right?
No, dude, he could fly, but we knew he could fly.
Yeah.
So Roman Wilson's had a nice start. Um,
Okay.
Not doing much different than what he did at Michigan. It's still the over routes, it's still, condensed formations, motion, free releases. They've experimented with him a bit on the outside, but not to the degree you would think. If you were going to go into week one with him as the starting outside guy opposite of Pickens. But he's looked good. He's just got a feel for it, man. It's a very similar role to what he did at Michigan. And
Okay.
so And I think the fact that he blocks his behind off actually is going to help him get open
No
with his
doubt.
speed, and his route running over the middle of the field. So I like him. I think the third guy that has stuck out that is like the wide receiver three to me so far through OTAs is Calvin Austin.
Okay.
He looks quicker. He looks like he has less wasted movement in his steps. He's separating more at all three levels. He could snap off routes now, comebacks and curls. So when you can do that, you can threaten deep much easier. So I think Calvin Austin has taken a little bit of a step. My guess is, and what I think is going to happen is they're going to add someone, whoever that might be. I think they will add someone before week one, but I am pretty confident that your wide receiver, your top four wide receivers this year in some capacity are probably going to end up being George Pickens, some outside addition, Roman Wilson, and Calvin Austin.
Hmm.
That's what I would think. And then I think the five even is kind of clear. I think it's probably going to be Van Jefferson.
Yeah. I have a feeling Van Jefferson's making the team, right? It seems like
Yeah,
he's a little bit better than the others, a little bit more experience with Arthur Smith's offense.
he definitely has more nuance in his game. Um, you know, Better route running, great hands. I think that's been the thing. He catches everything thrown his way. Um, he's not, you know, a super elite separator, but he can separate in short areas, which makes him a good red zone threat. So I think, short, I think third down, he can be a chain mover on the outside. He's a good blocker. I think he's someone that runs a full route tree. So he has some tools to his game, I think, that give you hope that he can take that uh wide receiver 4 or 5 role. If they add someone and someone gets hurt, I think Van Jefferson is a perfectly capable backup wide receiver and an upgrade over what they had last year. I think if
Oh
they can
yeah.
add someone from the outside, like the depth is they're going to be deeper at the position. I think Calvin Austin's going to be better in his third year. So 2024 Calvin Austin's better than 2023 Calvin Austin, theoretically. And I
Yeah.
think Van Jefferson's going to be better than Miles Boykin. Van Jefferson's probably better than Allen Robinson.
Yeah,
So,
I think so too.
so yeah.
Allen Robinson didn't give him a lot. Um, what do you make of the Juju Smith-Schuster stuff? I mean, this that got popular this weekend. I know he's definitely not the answer outside as a deep threat or even a number two receiver. Depth wise, I go back and forth. Right? Is he better than Van Jefferson? Is he better than Deuce Watkins? No.
Yeah, I don't
I
know
know
at
he's
this
beat up the knee.
like I don't know at this point. I think his knees are
Yeah.
so much of a problem that he might not be anymore. Um, he lost some explosiveness, man. He doesn't look as fast. His knees keep acting up. He's a
Mm-hmm.
slot exclusive. Is he a better slot than Van Jefferson? Yes. Is he a better outside receiver than Van Jefferson? No. So Juju was a nice player, but I think some of the injuries have caught up with him. Um, and I really wouldn't look to add him personally. I think Juju is a guy that obviously has locker room things, but if you're going to go for an upside signing with injuries, the signing you're going to make is Michael Thomas. Like that's probably who you would do if you're going to go that route with a ton of risk. I think Thomas is more in the tank. So, I mean, that's where I would go if you're going to do that. But I think ideally, trade comes to fruition. I think someone will
Yeah.
eventually come loose in the trade market. They just have to wait it out.
The fear with Michael Thomas is he's not exactly a stellar locker room guy either. I mean, I think if you traded DJ to remove that kind of player, yeah, I don't know if you bring Michael Thomas in. I don't know. I think that's just going backwards.
Yeah, but I do think you have to add someone to the room right now. I don't think
They
anyone
have to,
is
yeah. I don't.
satisfied.
You'll get no argument from me there. They need to add someone for sure. Because it goes from like not so great to really, really good if you can add a number two receiver, right? The room just everything slots down and it becomes a really deep room if you can just add one more guy.
Yeah. But like listen, man, if you can and I'm saying this, if you can add a Cortland Sutton, you don't even need to add Brandon Ayuk or DK Metcalf. If you can add Cortland Sutton, Darius Slayton, Jawan Jennings. Again, these aren't superstars. They're good twos or threes.
Yep.
I think you're fine. That's like People ask, why is it such an issue for them right now? It's because they have fours. You can get away with a really good two, which is Pickens, and two threes in Arthur Smith's scheme. You can't get away with a really good two and four fours.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing else. Let's switch over to tight ends. I saw a nice catch from Donnell Washington today on Twitter. Is he going to be the one of the guys that benefits the most from Arthur Smith's offense?
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I think he's going to be a huge part in their run scheme. Just with his mobility and his blocking skill, he's the best blocking tight end on the roster. So,
Mhm.
he's going to be a guy that they can use. I don't think he's going to be like a huge, receiving threat. I don't think that's ever going to be his thing. He's too stiff. He just is. He can't really cut in short areas. What I think you can do with him is two things. I think you can run him up the seam as, just a runaway freight train because that's what he is when he goes up the seam. And what I thought they really messed around with last year that didn't do him any service was I think he's a really good red zone threat. And I remember in training camp last year, he just dominated on the red zone and then never showed up
Mhm.
in the game. So I want to see Darnell Washington in the red zone. And I think, with the prevalence of the tight ends in Arthur Smith's scheme and how much he used guys like Johnny Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Michael Pruitt, I think we're going to see it. I think Darnell Washington's going to have a significantly bigger role in the red zone. This could be a guy that has 15 catches and like seven of them are touchdowns. Like that's the type of stat line this guy could have.
Yeah, it seems like they missed the boat on that last year, right? Not utilizing him more in the red zone. You have such a weapon there with size and stuff. Just another Matt Canada, another strike on the Matt Canada experience. Um, anything on Pat Frymuth in the slot? I know a lot of people have theorized maybe he'd end up being a slot receiver, kind of pseudo slot receiver for them. Any of that going on so far?
He's played all over the map. Slot, out wide, both sides, in line. He's going to be used all over the football field this year. And I mean that. When he's out wide, I feel like in the past when he was out wide, it was just as a decoy. He's actually going to be out wide trying to win. He's going to be running more routes. He told me he's going to be running, digs and
Hmm.
other things that aren't just choice routes. The routes where he ran last year was outs, curls, seams. Really, it was not much more than that. And teams would just sit on the choice routes, but he's going to add slants, digs, flag routes, corners. So he's going to be a more versatile piece for them in this offense. So slot specific, yeah, he'll play out there in the slot, but he'll also play all over the football field this year. I think he's going to be a significant part of what they do even if they add a receiver. I think he's going to have a significant role for them this year as their top receiving tight end. Um, Arthur Smith loves to use receiving tight ends. You look at what he's done. Kyle Pitts and
Mm-hmm.
John Smith last year, Johnny Smith, Delaney Walker, all those guys have been very heavily featured in his offenses. Expect Farmer to do the same as those guys. I truly expect that.
I think the Seals would be smart to sign him soon to an extension before he has a year in this offense because he's gonna if he has a big year, the price tag's just gonna roll on him. Get this guy signed before he explodes, not after.
Who knows what they're going to do with these, man? I actually don't know what they're going to do with their plan for this offseason, just because they have
They have a
so
ton,
many guys that are
ton.
on expiring deals with him, Najee, Daniels, Hayward. I mean, the whole Hayward thing right now is at the forefront, but there are,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, significant other players that could get extensions. We'll see. I think Fryermuth is a sleeper candidate to be one of the first ones there, just because of how prevalent I think he's going to be in Arthur
Yeah,
Smith's scheme.
definitely. Let's do running backs real quick. A lot of talk about Najee losing weight, getting in better shape. Does he look different? Does he look the same? Was that all
Looks a
about
little
nothing?
different. He definitely slimmed down a little bit.
Yeah.
I definitely think that he is a guy that has slimmed down, 5 or so pounds. Is it like the craziest change I've ever seen? No. Does he seem a little quicker and explosive? Yes. So I look at, you know, him and I see Najee kind of replicating the explosive types he had last year. He's not going to go for 50, 60 yard touchdowns, but 20, 30 yard chunks where he just runs hard. I think that's where it's going to be. I think he can be a little bit more explosive though, this year, but I don't think it's going to be like some crazy significant
Yeah.
leap in his game. He is in better shape for that type of run.
Yeah, we know who Najee Harris is at this point. I don't think there's going to be any earth-shattering changes in his game. Cordero Patterson, using him all over the place. Uh, any slot stuff, any wide receiver stuff, or mainly out of the backfield.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that, does play a little bit everywhere. He's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. I think he's going to main out of the backfield, but I do think he'll slip out into the slot, specifically like condensed formations where he's off the line and can be protected. He'll get manufactured screens and other things such as that, end arounds, jet sweeps. That's where he'll get most of his work, I'm gonna imagine. They have, I think if there's any year for we talk about these two running back sets that they throw out in camp every year and in the preseason,
And
this is
never use.
they have three legitimately intriguing running backs to use. So I mean Najee and Jalen on the field together, any combination, of those three, I think needs to happen. These are guys that are really talented. Certainly, Harris and Warren are two of your top weapons on the offensive side of the ball that
Yeah, 100%.
you have to use. So, Patterson factors into that. I think obviously his biggest impact will be on the new kickoff game, but he is going to be a guy that plays a little bit everywhere. But I wouldn't lump him in with the receiver room. He's a running back slash do it all weapon, gadget player, whatever you
Yeah,
want to.
it's not a bad thing to have actually. Lamichael Pirine and Jonathan Ward, just depth guys at this point. I know they just signed this week. Um, I was a little
Yeah.
surprised that they were bringing in so many backs since they already have three plus the undrafted free agent who's escaping my mind right now.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if they keep four running backs. I think that might be there might be something to that, which is why they're adding so many guys. They needed depth anyways. Najee and Jalen and Patterson, for that matter, do not need a ton of reps this early in the season. They just don't. There's really no reason for them to take this huge amount of team reps. So you'd rather give that to guys like Dejon Edwards and Aaron Champlin, Jonathan
Yeah, that's
Ward,
fine.
or Michael P. Ryan. So I think that there might be four running backs to make this team. I
That's
was
interesting.
surprised by it. They've done it in the past. Arthur Smith has done it in the past. So maybe there's a battle there for running back four. We'll see. But I don't think like there's some significant seismic shift coming. Like it doesn't signal anything. But would not surprise me if they keep a fourth running back and there's a camp battle here.
Before we flip to the defense, I forgot to ask you about Zach Frazier on the offensive line. How's he looking so far?
Yeah, man. Running with the second team right now. They got Nate
Herbig in the
Herbig
first.
over
Yep.
him. Um, Really nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Expect him to start week one. It makes sense. But right now he's kind of just. I say the same thing with Fautanu. It's hard to evaluate O linemen in
Hmm.
this environment because they're playing patty cake. I mean, as long as
Yeah.
they get to their spot, they look fine. Frazier looks fine. He moves well in space. He's taken on a leadership role already. He's the second team guy right now. While he learns, fully expect him to start over Nate Herbig. I don't care how many times people try to convince me Nate Herbig and Zach Frazier's a competition. Zach Frazier's starting week one.
It can't be right. I mean, we're not going to go down that road, hopefully. I know
I don't know.
Tomlin tends to
They'll
favor
probably
the
show up the
veterans, but
first week of training camp, have Herbig run the first team for like the first 2 days. Everyone will go crazy, and then Frazier
yeah.
will run first team. I think he'll start.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way it'll go. All right, let's flip over to defense. No Cam Hayward, obviously. So it's Keanu Benton, Larry Ogajobi, and is it Leal? Is it somebody else that's got that third spot?
Yeah, it's going to be Hayward, Benton, and Ogunjobi starting, and then I think their depth guys. I think the backup nose is pretty clearly going to be Monty Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And then after there, I think Dean Lowry's a lock to make the roster. As kind of a run heavy guy, the guy that can get some power bull rush stuff going. So from there, you have either one or two spots left, and it depends on what you want. If you want another real run stuffer, you get Isaiah Loudermilk on the roster. If you want a guy with more flexibility and athleticism, I guess you go with Liao. Fajoko's there as a big plugger. Logan Lee, as a guy that can kind of flash at times. So I think you have five guys that I'm fairly confident are going to make the roster, and then there's two spots up for grabs. My bet right now is Loudermilk makes the team, and then maybe one other guy, probably Logan Lee, if that happens.
So no Leal, you don't think he's
I
on
don't
the
really
outside
think
looking
so.
in?
I don't think it's his fault necessarily. I think they kind of screwed up it from the jump by not having a super plan for him. He
Hmm.
was a tweener always, and they kind of put him in inside at five, then flipped him out to outside back or flipped him back in, and it was just like,
Hmm.
what are you doing with him? This year he's purely inside again. Maybe it clicks, but I do think he's probably going to be the outside looking in.
Me and Dave talk about all the time. It's they Sean Davis him. They moved him around, from this position to that position, and never gave the kid a chance really to hone in on one spot. Right? It's outside, inside. It's too bad. Um,
Yeah.
let's flip over to outside linebacker. I'm kind of excited about Jeremiah Moon. Um, I like his physical traits. Showed a little stuff with the Ravens last year. What do you see from him so far?
Yeah, the athleticism is really what pops. And this guy is a freak athlete. Flies off the edge, has incredible explosiveness. I look at him and I am excited about the athletic tools. I think he makes the team by being a really good special teamer,
Mm-hmm.
which he has already been in Baltimore, and then developing the rest of his game around there. If you're looking for a guy that's going to come in and be as good as Marcus Golden was in the pass rush department, I think he's a little too raw to do that. But he does have electric physical tools to where he can grow into being something. And the Steelers do a nice job of developing their edge rushers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's possible that he could, but expect him right now to be the four because of his special teams ability.
Yeah, and Herbig being the main backup on for the outside linebackers. Inside, we pretty much know it's going to be Patrick Queen. Um, how's Peyton Wilson look? The athleticism is there. It's off the charts for a linebacker. It's health is the big thing with him and how quickly he can pick up the defense. How's he looked so far?
Yeah, again, same thing with like linebackers. Like till the pads pop on, I think it's hard to
Yeah.
tell. But I do think he is a guy, calling green dot stuff right now. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Just learn how to call the plays, the verbiage of it all. His athleticism is very real. There's no doubt about it. He could fly around the field. He has impeccable speed and explosiveness. He's very fluid. I think that's another thing, flipping his hips and getting to turn. He's a fluid player in coverage. Like you could see the speed when he runs, neck for neck with running backs up the seam and stuff like that. So he's looking fine. I love that they're giving him green dot exposure this early on. That's probably it's probably one of the things, when with Holcomb still not fully back, that they're able to do is to give him green dot opportunities. And I think that's only going to help him in the long run. I certainly think this year there's like no path to him being the green dot. I think pretty clearly it's either going to be
Yeah.
Patrick Queen or Landon Roberts. But in the future, if that comes up, he's going to have experience doing it. I'm excited to see what happens when the pads come on because I think people are talking about the athleticism and the coverage ability. I actually thought his best trait, outside of the athleticism, was his blitzing ability. Just because
Mm-hmm.
they lined him off the edge and he was a menace as a blitzer. So when backs on backers come, I'm really excited to see what he can do.
That'll be fun. You brought up Cole Holcomb. Any buzz, any word, any talk of what the injury, where he stands? It's
Yeah,
like the
man.
biggest mystery in camp, right?
So like he's walking around, doing some light activity. Looks like too. I don't think he's super super duper full. I don't know if he'll be ready for the start of camp. I do think he will be ready for week one. That's my
Oh, you
guess.
do. Okay.
He might start training camp on the pup, and come back, midway through or somewhere around
Mm-hmm.
there. But I do think he's going to be, ramping up in like the middle of training camp and from there, I think we'll kind of see where it figures out. But I think he's on track to maybe play week one. If he doesn't, he will be back by midseason, though.
That's the most optimistic and best news I've heard about Cole Holcomb this whole offseason, really, because it's kind of been shrouded in mystery what the injury was and how he's doing. And the
Do
Steelers have been
not
really
think
hush hush.
I know there's been, career threatening talk. I do not think it's career threatening. I think he'll be back this year at some.
If he ever could make a comeback, that would be as solid a linebacker unit as they've had in a very long time.
It'd
That
be
would be
it'd be
something.
it'd be huge for them because you know when you look at that guy, man, he was the like rock steady guy of that room before he got injured.
Yep.
If he is ready for week one, I think they're going to have a very tough decision. If he shows up day one of training camp and is ready to go, and he gets to practice, and we have full on linebacker competition between four dudes, I think they're going to have a tough time deciding which two to start. I really do. I think Queen and Roberts probably would get it just because I like their complement next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think Queen is like the undisputed 100%. He's going to start guy, but man, that's a deep room. And that's four deep easily. All
Yeah.
different skill sets too on top of that.
Yeah. You can mix and match. And Holcomb was playing really, really well when he got hurt. He had really come into his own there. It's too bad. It really is too bad because he was playing some of his best football when he got injured. Um, let's flip to corner. Joey Porter Jr. thinks he's the best corner in football. He does not lack in confidence, which is great, and he is pretty damn good corner. After him, it gets a little. I don't know how your feelings on Dante Jackson. I'm lukewarm on him at best, and then after him, anybody showing anything? Do you expect another corner to come in at some point this offseason?
I think they'll get a slot in there at some point. I'm not like in love um with Dante Jackson. I do think he's better, than Patrick Peterson and Levi Wallace and those guys they had last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna be fat. He's gonna bring speed. He's gonna bring willingness to tackle. I think he can cover twos and threes at a fine rate. He's not going to be an elite player, but I think they'll get by with him. And he will be again, he will be much better, I think, than who they had trotting out their corner two last year, which I think is part of what matters here. Outside of him, Trice and Rush. Rush has had a nice start to his OTAs. Seems like he trusts his technique more. The athleticism has just always been there. Trice, it's hard to tell with Trice, man. I mean, he's wearing a massive brace on his right knee right now. He's practicing, but he turned like when you have a brace like that on, you just turn like a battleship. And I
Yeah.
remember last year, one of the things that shocked me about Trice was how fluid he was for his size. Doesn't have it right now because of that brace. So I'm waiting to see when that brace comes off, where we'll see with Corey Trice. I'm interested in some of those guys they have on the outside. I'm not loving the slot options. Beanie is, I think, the most intriguing of them to me, but like Josiah Scott, whatever.
Yeah.
Respectfully, the Eagles tape is not good. Beanie Bishop has a mentality I think that can get him into that job. Wouldn't surprise me if they go into this year splitting that job up like they have in the past. Where one guy's the pass down slot and the rundown slot.
Mm-hmm.
You think back to what 22 when it was Art Mollett who was a rundown nickel, and then they would Cam Sutton would slip inside to be the pass down nickel. Could see something very similar to that this year, where maybe a guy like Beanie Bishop or Josiah Scott is the rundown nickel, and then maybe whoever they sign on now, Cam Sutton is the pass down nickel, or maybe Patrick Peterson is their pass down nickel, something like that.
I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen Patrick Peterson re-signed by now. I thought that
Yeah.
was like a done deal, especially
I
after the
do.
draft.
I mean, I'll say this: I do think they know that the guy is kind of cooked. So if they could find an
Agreed.
alternative, they should.
Yeah, agreed. Cam Sutton's interesting, right? I mean, as a slot only corner, he would be a perfect fit on this football team, right? I mean, he might not be the outside corner that the Lions thought he would be, but he's definitely got the chops to be easily the best slot corner on this team.
Oh, for sure. He would be the best pass down slot they have. Like by far. I don't think it's close. I think, signing him legal stuff pending, of course,
Yeah,
um, is a smart football move. I do think
absolutely.
it would be a good football move for them. And so you look at what he would bring to the table, and he would bring stability for them, and certainly would help really solidify that room. I really look at it, and like you look at what they would have at that point with Porter, Jackson, Sutton, Elliott, and Minka, and it's
Minka.
not an elite, it's not a sexy, um, you know, secondary, but it's a solid one.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely. That we've been talking about all off season. The slot corner is like the final piece of the puzzle for the secondary to make it, I think, pretty good, above average secondary in this league this year if they can solve that one and everyone stays healthy. Obviously, we saw a lot of Minka and Deshaun Elliott. I'm sorry, working together today. Um, I'm kind of exciting about that pairing. I think that's a good duo for the Steelers this year.
I think, Elliott does things that Minka can do really well, but maybe
You don't want them doing it, right?
don't want him doing. Like I think
Yeah,
Minka is while being an elite free safety is also an elite box safety and slot corner, but I don't want him playing there. I think it takes away from
exactly.
his playmaking skills. I think what they want him to do is play back, play as a robber, play free safety, get back to what made Minka a ball hawk, what made Minka Minka. And so I think Elliott's going to take on a lot of those slot, blitz duties, a lot of those strong safety inserts. I think, Elliott's maybe not super athletic, but he's a good player. He's super smart, gets to where he needs to go. I think the speed isn't terrible, so he will be able to keep up with most guys. He might not want him in man coverage, but I don't think he's going to be asked to do that much either. So I like the duo, and then you have Casey,
Hmm.
as a third safety that can insert in those three safety packages, and you can do some cool stuff with. But I think that whole pairing, about Elliott and Minka has been more about getting Minka back to being Minka.
Yeah, you don't want Minka being your second leading tackler and all that stuff. You want him back in the secondary, like you said, being the robber, creating turnovers, making plays. Um, he could be probably an elite strong safety if you really want, but that's not really where you want him to be at all. And I think Casey as the third safety is exactly what you want him to be, not starting like he was last year, but as like you said, a third safety. That's perfect for him. So I'm excited about the secondary this year. If everyone stays healthy, the depth scares me a little bit, but
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of how it looks when it's final, but I think they'll add one more guy to that room and we'll kind of see. I think they have some young pieces behind Jackson, and Trice and Rush to at least have intrigue there too. So it's not, a black hole. It's not the receiver position, I'll say that.
yeah, that's for sure. I think we've covered it all. Anything else stick out to you so far? A week and a day in OTAs? Anything that I missed? Anyone
Um,
playing well?
Zach Azani, the wide receivers coach, has been
I
coaching these
hear a lot
guys'
about him,
tails
right?
off, man. I'll tell you that. That's
Yep,
been something that stuck out to me. He does not accept mediocrity, at
that's
all.
awesome.
If you don't try, man, he's gotten on Picken's behind multiple times already, trying to
Wow.
just get him out of it. So I'm interested to see how George responds to that. But yeah, that dude coaches hard, and Arthur Smith does too. So it's kind of interesting to see the new blood on the offensive side of the ball and how they coach.
They needed that, right? I mean, that offense was all over the place. People spouting off, it was just bad.
Yeah, man, they needed someone to like lay a hammer. That's what they
Yep.
needed, and they got it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Those two will lay a hammer down. Period.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, you hear a lot about Zach Azani and how tough he is, and from former players and stuff like that. And that's a perfect hire. That's one of the ones they really got right this offseason. Um, we'll see about Arthur Smith, but Zach Azani was a good hire,
Yeah, I'm
just what they
interested to
needed.
see kind of how the development takes place, but I'm interested to see how Pickens responds to it over time,
That's
and
interesting,
we
right?
see it
That might
show up
wear
on the
thin.
football field. Um,
Yeah,
because I know George can block, like he just doesn't do it. I know he can block though.
yeah. We've seen it. We've
Yep,
seen it, but and
when
we've
he
also
wants to,
seen
man,
him
he wants to.
not block too, unfortunately. Um,
It's all about want. When he wants to block, he can block his behind off. There's
yeah,
no doubt about it.
You get the feeling it's all about want and everything with George Pickens. If he wants to be one of the best receivers in football and he puts his mind to it, it's there. It's just getting through to him and getting him some
Yeah,
decent quarterback play doesn't hurt either.
I would agree, man. It's just like it's just like when you look at it, can he just have just enough effort, just enough because he is so talented and he clearly puts in the work. I mean, he developed last year. He was a much different player than he was year one. So he clearly puts in the work. You just need to actually try sometimes on the field. When you're not getting the ball, you actually have to put it in still, right? Like that's the big thing.
That's another thing Dave and I talked about a lot last season. It's like I go back and forth with George Pickens because I don't like some of the stuff that we see, the lack of effort and the spouting off. But at the same time, when you try to put yourself in his shoes and to be in that Matt Canada offense for 2 seasons with abysmal quarterback play and abysmal offense, and you're so dependent on that to get you the football, I'm not excusing it, but I can see where you get frustrated and that might affect your play for sure because it, I don't think we can downplay how bad this offense was the last 2 seasons. I really don't. From quarterback to coordinator to everything, it's been historically bad.
Whole lot of new this year, man. Whole lot of new. Like that is something else, Just there's a vibe of new all around the team. It's drastic. I'll say that.
That's awesome. All right, Nick. Unless you got anything else, that was great. I appreciate it, and having eyes on in the OTAs when we can't really see anything, it's invaluable. And I appreciate you coming on.